Well, another week passed in LPL. Everybody is. It's a beautiful day, or a beautiful week, I suppose, in that everything makes sense in China. Isn't everybody happy that games are
Totally. Makes
Yeah,
expanding?
perfect
things make
sense.
a lot of sense.
So I think we should just get it on. Get with this. This is horrible. So, OMG, everybody. Let's start off with OMG because you know what? Why not? Everybody, that's our favorite team.
Cool had a good week. I mean, they're still. I don't know. I'm still really weird about OMG just because of the whole Uzi transfer and the fact that like I don't care. I actually don't care as much about OMG as what it did to Star Royal Club. But like I was really impressed with Cool. His Cassiopeia in was it game 1 against League? It's like super impressive.
Mhm.
And I feel
I think
like
he's the only undefeated Cassiopeia left in LPL.
Oh,
So
wow.
thank you.
good job for him. Congratulations. Also
See
has
how
the
long-
highest KDA of any player in LPL right now, so Cool's doing pretty well for himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool is stepping up a lot. My main problem with OMG right now is that they've had a few weeks to play and find an identity, and like, okay, the whole purpose of this reforming of the team without the old roster, like, here's where I don't understand where OMG's really going, because they formed this new team to kind of cater to Uzi to make this style of working around him work, since that wasn't the way that the trio up top naturally played before.
Mhm.
But now at the same time, like, I feel like they're playing more selfish laning styles and jungle styles, and Uzi is still playing a little bit more self-sufficient, even if he is playing on champions like Sivir and stuff. And so what kind of bothers me about this is the fact that this has been going on so long and they have been playing these carry top and mid laners is what, like, why couldn't they have done this with leveling and going? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like nothing's really changed because they aren't like really significantly more supportive in the jungle and top lane positions with these new starters. And it's not that they're doing bad or anything like that. It's just kind of like, if that was the whole concept behind making the transition of those players, then what is the purpose? Like, I don't really understand why they switched anything out if they're just going to play the same way they did before.
So, what do you think about this, Kelsey? Because I feel like what we're getting to was the change felt a lot more internal. We didn't really see much of a, I guess, I mean, we did see kind of a shift in playstyle differences, but I feel like maybe we see like a more one-track minded team in the sense that they're more organized.
Like, I just feel like they tried so hard with the wrong roster to make
Yeah.
protect the Uzi work last split, and now all of a sudden Uzi is playing Sivir and, like, you know, helping supplement a team of like carries and threats in the other lanes. Like, I don't understand.
I actually disagree with the thought that it's less UZI centric, because the only case where I actually think that's true is the last game that they played, where there were a lot more ganks mid for Cool's Varus. I forget who their opponent was, but there were a lot more frequent ganks mid. Otherwise, almost always, juejue goes to the bottom lane. Top lane has the highest kill participation in the league, Xiang, actually, of all top laners, because he's constantly teleporting bottom, and that's how they start action. Like, there are always just fights bottom side, and UZI actually, I haven't done the stats post this week, but prior to this week, he had the highest gold percentage for his team of any player in the league. So, I mean, they're still funneling a lot of resources towards UZI. It's just that I feel like, despite that, Cool is carrying the team.
I think that might just be a meta thing, but I think it just, in the champion picks, it just feels like they could have pulled this off with leveling and get going, personally. But
That's the thing, though. I feel like that's what we're really starting to. That's why we're starting to see such a bit like. That's the real difference. Is not so much the skill in the player or the style that they played, but how much of a say or like a difference that they've had in opinions. Now, of course, we don't know what's going on, but I feel like that's the difference. Is like the shot calling aspect of it. And now that they see more, of course, now they surround UZI in a sense. So, I don't know. I feel like that's Emily.
That could
Do
be
you
part
think
of
that's
it.
the
Well,
case?
I was gonna say that could be part of it because I remember previously they were saying how like Loveling and Uzi basically couldn't be on the same team
Mhm.
Like not because like they hate each other or anything, but just because their visions for what goes on in game are just like so
Yeah,
drastically
that's
different
just a
that the
theory.
team.
That's not
Yeah, okay,
necessarily.
so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was that was Kelsey's theory, but like I can't help but think that that's probably part of the case because removing like wasn't a lot of OMG's problem in terms of leveling himself was that he kept trying to make these really like dramatic kind of like flashy plays from the jungle, but he didn't have as much gold to do it with, so
Mhm.
it wouldn't end up working out. And I think in terms of like I don't know, I still see I would have to look at the statistics too. I still see Cool like especially this week I saw that Cool was kind of the more like primary carry of the team, I guess, in terms of
Yeah, I'd
playmaking.
like to see the
But
statistics, but yeah.
like I don't know if there's anything different about the team. It I will say it does seem like the team isn't trying to do different things. Like different parts of the map aren't trying to do different things at once. So
Mhm.
it does seem a bit more cohesive, even if like the overall vision of what they're trying to do is very similar, if that makes sense. Like the pieces are in more agreement
Yeah.
for what the team overall wants to do. Sorry,
And
that's a little
so,
rambly.
I think
I mean, it works.
so. From my perspective, yeah, I think that's a big factor. The other thing is that the team and people close to the team ended up being fairly open about a lack of motivation, at least from going.
Mhm.
The fact that he wasn't practicing as hard, like in the off season, his manager ended up taking away his phone to try to make him practice. The fact that
It's like fucking
he was
nice, yeah.
frequently seen
Weird.
duo queuing with girls.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I don't know, just and then people said like
The
that
Chowster of
OMG
China.
was a bit of a party team, so they
The
definitely
party.
were out partying frequently. Like that was the life, right? We formed
Yeah.
the Chinese super team. We went undefeated for the first 10 games. We
Mhm.
obviously don't have to practice. Let's just go karaoke, get some
It's really
girls.
shocking for a team like pretty much branded as a boy band that just
Yeah,
makes music
exactly.
videos and shit.
EXO OMG, right? That's the joke, is that they're EXO OMG after like I think it's the Korean or Chinese boy band. I'm sorry, I can't remember which EXO is, but just a bunch
I
of
have
pretty
no idea.
boys.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
yeah, so
So,
I guess I could see that, but like, and I
but
do think
so
that
if they're
naturally
just like, obviously they prefer to look internally and say, oh, we already have these players lying around. We like to be homegrown. Let's just throw Xiang up to the top lane.
To the
This can't
top lane.
possibly go wrong.
I will say, okay, like true, he played like Maokai or
He
whatever,
plays
but
Maokai.
like
Maokai
yeah.
doesn't count. Everyone can play Maokai. We have established that Aluka and
Aluka.
Pokemon
So
can play
all they
Maokai.
have
We
to
have
do
a
is
general baseline for the Maokai.
put him on Scion.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Automatically, they'll win.
Michael, what
like,
did you have to say before?
I was just saying on the note of like the team just like naturally meshing better. I guess you can say that, but I still think that like given time with the way they're playing now and the fact that they are more flexible with distributing wealth, at least this is like what this is an anecdote. I don't actually know because I don't have statistics, but this is just from watching. I do think that leveling could meld into that, and like yeah, we say that he's used to having an insane amount of gold, and now he's trying to play the same way as he did as if he had that without those resources, but this isn't really like the first time we've seen Leveling kind of do stupid stuff in the regular season and then still turn out to be one of the best junglers showing up at international tournaments and stuff like that. So that I guess that's one of my concerns with the new lineup is how they would fare internationally, especially with how much experience. I mean, I know Gagoing has those like the issues with motivation, but those two do have a significant amount of international experience, and if they are very world focused, then I mean, I don't know. That just seems like something that seems a little bit strange to me. But yeah, I don't know. Jiang, in his defense, like for the competition that is in the top lane of China, is like doing okay. I mean, he's like holding his own. He's not like doing anything spectacular. Certainly not like a showing of going S4 Worlds or anything. But I mean, it's also a really hard comparison to make because now we have like so many Chinese top laners that aren't actually top laners playing top lane, like a huge amount.
A third of
Yeah.
the region has transitioned to the top
To
lane.
top.
A third of LPL has transitioned to top lane within the past year.
It is a confusing life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird.
With that being said, then we can really talk about when
I realized I
on the-
left Xiang out of my article. He's so sad.
He's like the happiest person. He's just like looking. He's just looking at the article with a smile on his face because he doesn't know. He doesn't understand the emotion of sadness. He's just always happy. Yeah. Just like based off of the idea of international experience, I feel like we should really talk about basic experience. Let's talk about juejue and juejue.
Amazing.
Okay, juejue and amazing. How do you guys think they
That
played
guy
so
that
far?
you were hyping for like half a year.
I've been actually I didn't forget the name. I just literally thought that I said juejue. I was like when I said juejue, I was like, I don't know, that sounds horrible. That's something horrible in that pronunciation of that. But anyways, how have they done so far? That's my question. I guess compared to their counterparts. Obviously, once I put down juejue, people will be like, lovely, but what do you guys think?
Amazing is the best option they've had in support all year, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
Cloud, I thought was really, really mechanically talented, and on an individual basis, I rated him
Mm.
probably like a top 3 support for a couple weeks, but that was only a couple weeks, right? That was like
Yeah.
2 weeks where he was performing out of this world. Like, he was able to get Sona and play Sona in that meta, and I was like, this is kind of silly, but his Sona was
Yeah.
pretty insane. And then, like, he started playing Annie all the time, and I don't understand why he can't figure out how to play Annie if he's a good Sona player, but I guess it somehow doesn't translate. And the team just kind of obviously fell apart, and Amazing has been really solid so far. Whereas Law, there just wasn't a consistent support player on that team, like all last split.
Yeah.
So if they stick with Amazing, I think he's really good.
Yep,
And then juejue, I feel like the thing with juejue, it's almost like he's he's like a less good version of Loveling, because I feel like he hasn't really looked good on
Yeah.
the Cinderhulk patch at all, or like stood out at all in all of his ganks. Like, the gank statistics for OMG is that they, despite the fact that they have really early times for first tower, first dragon, all this other stuff, they have like 25% first blood success rate. So they just, like, their ganks get turned their early ganks get turned constantly. Like, he's just hasn't been good. And then this week he plays Lee Sin, which is Loveling's signature champion, despite his terrible, abysmal win-loss record on it last split. And he looked like a completely different jungler. So I feel like he has very similar strengths and weaknesses to Loveling. But I really honestly have no idea how good he's going to be going forward. And as we see less Cinderhulk and more of these other junglers coming back, I don't know. We'll see.
Has Amazing played anything that's like non-tank jungler? Because I think he's just played like Nautilus almost every game, right?
Joy? Or
Sure.
No, Amazing.
support? Oh.
Tank
He's
support, right?
very good Annie player though.
Yeah, he's a really good. That's like one of his exceptions because basically he always plays an initiating support. I would actually be. I feel like the day I might have missed. If I've missed the game, I'd be sad. But the day he plays a Janna, like a Janna support, would be hilarious.
Janna and
That's-
Nami,
No,
it's
he didn't
coming
play it.
out.
Yeah, it's coming. So on just to really move on from that to like let's find a segue. Hey, guess who faced OMG? Snake. Yeah, Snake actually faced 3 teams this week, so it's probably worth mentioning. They have so far pretty tough schedule. They faced OMG, LGD, and IG, and they're doing pretty damn well. What do you guys think of their play, especially some of their players? Flandre Crystal, new style. I'm gonna start this with Drexen.
Oh yeah, I think given the schedule that Snake had to go against, I think they did really well. They went 4-2, I believe, overall, and I really like that. I don't know if it's because he was like threatened by Martin's ability to take a spot, but I feel like Crystal's been playing a lot smarter, and his variety of champion pools is a lot better now. Like he's been playing better on Sivir. He had a pretty good Vayne game, and I think that Snake's team fighting
That was
even
his first ever competitive Vayne game, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and I really do think that Snake, even better than last season, is team fighting a lot better, and he was picking up the assassins. I really liked his. I really felt that the Twisted Fate pick was an interesting development because the way they played it against LGD wasn't really just like skirmish based. Like they literally every time TF had ult up, they'd send all 5 members to one part, and it would almost always work every single time against LGD, which is actually pretty, like, it's actually pretty impressive considering LGD usually has typically pretty good vision and strategy. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that like Snake is not only expanding on the way they play, but their team fighting is really good. Like I think that if they continue to like force 5v5 scenarios, that they'll do really well. But I think they might struggle against intelligent split pushing.
Mhm.
But otherwise, no, I don't know. They've been doing really good. I can't really complain for the schedule they had. They definitely didn't have weak opponents by any means. So
All right. Kelsey, how do you like their, I guess, the new style that they're having? Do you think it's, because I know a lot of criticisms that Snake has had going into the LPL in general has been based on their consistency. Everybody kind of like plays carries, I suppose. And now they're kind of, sort of bringing back that style. Do you think it's, what do you think of the idea itself, let alone, I guess, the record that they're holding?
I think they're struggling to still fix their early game problems and bring up the pace of their game.
well, against
Invictus
I will say
Gaming,
against IG that
yeah.
their dragon control is really good.
Their Snake versus Invictus Gaming set was interesting because I think both IG and Snake have been playing slower games
Yeah.
leading up to this, which was not the narrative that was spun on the LPL cast, but that's okay. A lot of new casters, we're okay with that. And it was a much slower, it's been slower overall, and then both of those teams won kind of like by abusing the fact that they knew that their opponent prefers a slower playstyle and then ramping up really early, so it was almost like whoever moved first. And I feel kind of like Snake's win was almost gimmicky. It was almost like a gimme, and wasn't really because they played super well, but because Invictus Gaming made the mistake of putting a Maokai into a lane swap against a Vayne super early on, and then just like giving Vayne a bunch of free kills.
Yeah.
So it was really hard to say that their style was improved because of they made like much faster early game play, and just Invictus Gaming completely misplayed the lane swap or mispredicted the lane swap or whatever they did.
Yeah.
But I still think, yeah, the early game decision making, especially in their OMG set, I feel like if Snake gets to 20 minutes, they actually are really good at sidewave control. Like, contrary to, like, I think early game weakness, that's true, that they will get wrecked by people splitting focus across the map, but sidewave control is their strength. Like, they're playing more carry threats so that they can run split push compositions. Use Twisted Fate. I won't say, I think that composition almost compensated for some weaknesses that Use Twisted Fate has had in the past, where he's had really awkward ports, and it's just like, if we send the whole team with him, it won't be weird.
It's like, you know, I'm
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that they're continuing to try new things, but at the same time, I still feel like they have that Snake style at their very core that I think that over time that they'll start to improve upon. It was fun to see Flandre play Yasuo and Fizz again, just a throwback.
Yeah.
Yasuo is terrible, but people need to stop picking Yasuo. The Fizz is actually good.
The Fizz is good.
The Fizz is
It's
actually
true.
good in this meta, contrary to what half of the people want to tell you. So, there you go.
God, I remember when he picked up Yasuo, and I was like, you don't have a good record on Yasuo. In fact, I think he has like an even record, to be honest. Like
But people still ban it against him because they're just like, what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah, exactly. The sad thing about him even having an even record is the fact that they had like a completely like they're in the LSPL, they had like such a massive winning record that the fact he was even on Yasuo, man, it was pretty shit. Like it was like he was losing games on Yasuo. I was like,
Like all the games he lost.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so he brought out the Fizz, and I was like, hey, that's fun. I wish it was AP, but then of course that'd be horrible. So let's not have that. So
Corn begs
Emily.
to differ.
Hey man, Corn is
Not a
not the
top
top
laner.
laner.
Yeah.
Okay?
Not
That's
yet.
next.
Sorry.
That's
Not
yet.
I
They
don't-
swap
I mean,
insect to mid.
So, Emily, I want to talk to you about two things, really. First of all, I'll let you just, I guess, to answer any of the last questions I posed to Drux and Kelsey, but mostly, Nidalee Jungle from Beast. I guess he's decided he's tired of Nunu. I don't blame him. But how do you think his, not even specifically Nidalee, but I guess his widened jungle pool. Let's just say that. Let's make it.
I was actually going to talk about Beast anyway, so thank you. I thought he's improved in both champion pool and just his overall map pressure, I guess. And I think it's because the fact that Snake is experimenting or like trying to branch out and try new things I think has allowed for him to, because previously when he was always on like the Nunu and the Jarvan, it was kind of to make up for like glaring other weaknesses that the team had, and then obviously his own weaknesses in like his champion pool.
Yeah.
I think it's also kind of a like another reason behind it is because we hopefully are going to see a little bit more jungle diversity going forward.
Yeah.
Maybe. But it was cool to see him try it out. Obviously it didn't oh no, they did. Yeah, they got the win off of it. I mean, it was like, I mean, Kelsey kind of already brought it up, but like the reason why they won that game wasn't really because of his Nidalee, but like he tried.
So them snipes, man, let's go.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a really weird comp they ran it in too, because they had like a 4-threat comp, and I think it was also just
like Flounder was on Hecarim, and then Crystal's on Vayne, so it's like okay.
Yeah, and like I think it was like Rookie's worst game too, so it's also really hard to gauge.
By the way,
sure did, like,
to clarify, you is an Azir player. It was one of his most played champions on solo queue. He actually came out and said, before I started feeling like I need to expand my champion pool, I was playing mostly only Azir in solo queue, so he's definitely an Azir pet player, for sure. Yeah, so...
I get the feeling that, like, literally every mid laner, their resume has to be like, I play Azir for them to
Well,
like...
yeah, Azir and Cassiopeia for sure right now, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, the nurse coming to LeBlanc, we'll probably see even more Azir.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Rest in peace. Alright.
His most played champions are LeBlanc and Azir. I think Beast really likes Nidalee, is the other thing I want to say, is that because that was his most successful, that was Snake's only other successful composition. They ran it in like 3 games, I think, and won 2 of them. Where they had Xerath and Nidalee, and they just had like this poke snipe comp, so I think they were kind of going for that again. Trying to mix things up. He's played it a bunch of times already, the split too. I think he just really likes it. I still don't think, unless your name is Spirit, you should be playing Nidalee, but hey.
It's one of those things, it's like, fun. Hey, it's...
I think his record is like
forward.
3 and 4. His record is like 3 and 4, so yeah. Anyway, continue, sorry.
Emily.
No, I mean, I was gonna say, the thing I really liked about Snake, and like I know I like pooped on it last week or the week before, was Cinderhulk Fizz. But like watching Flounder on Fizz with the Cinderhulk was really funny, especially like the one game I think against LGD where like he built his skirmishers but then refused to get Cinderhulk and built Triforce first.
All I wanted was Flounder not to be Crystal's bitch. That's all I wanted in life. It was just to see him play his own style.
You got your wish.
I know.
And I got it. That's all I wanted.
We should
just have it, the Snake celebration.
They're gonna nerf LeBlanc, and no one's gonna want to play it, and he'll play it with Static Shave Triforce in the top lane again. Let's go!
It's like, hey, I don't need this. This doesn't do damage with me anyways, alright? I just needed to get closer to you. Alright, so IG, Invictus Gaming, this was probably my... for this week they had like a really good game. And I only say game because they had a set. The second game wasn't that good. But you know what, whatever. They had a really close game against DDG. And so, I guess, how do you feel like IG is going into this split so far? Still second place, or other teams contending?
It's really hard. It's really hard to say. I feel like they do a lot of dumb things that seem like they don't care to qualify them as a second place team. But yeah, they did have a really good game against EDG. The problem was EDG still won despite the fact that EDG's strategy was like, well, Baron didn't work, let's throw ourselves at it again. Okay, that didn't work, let's throw ourselves at it again. And they actually won the game that way. But I do think that, like, overall in team play, they're doing really well. I think that I also want to see them as the meta shifts, because I feel like this is a particularly really good meta for them. Like with Rookie being the primary carry threat, and Ztai's been doing a lot better in team fights, I feel. Like his Hecarim in game 1 was really good. He was able to essentially zone all the threats almost single-handedly, and Rookie was really good at locking up anyone else that was a threat. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, the one thing I really didn't like is I feel like they would have had a decent chance in the second game of this set because I remember that I don't know if it was I didn't check the value of gold that kid had when he went to shop, but he did have avarice greed or
Mhm.
avarice blade
Yeah.
greed, which really bothers me. Like I never see this work out ever, which annoys the shit out of me because even though he went avarice blade, I think pawn or no, I'm sorry, I think Def went pickaxe and he was still staying even. He's still staying even in farm, but the problem
Mhm.
was that he was on Jinx, which in early team fights you obviously need that passive in order to do really well and snowball out of control. And there were so many times they had early team fights in the bottom lane where kids would like get them really low and then they would just like live just barely and it like completely changed the outcome of the team fights because he wasn't able to get excited and clean up the rest of the kills because he went for that avarice blade. So I don't know. I felt like that was I felt like kids like doing really well, but I feel like that kind of like threw their chance at tying up the series, and that even though the second game seemed pretty stompy, I feel like IG could have won one or two of the set.
Mhm.
So
Well, it was also like I remember saying this on like a previous show, but like all I wanted to see like out of IG, like I was like, okay, I swear to God, Nocturne works. Like I miss Cacao Nocturne. I want him to play that champion. He plays Nocturne. And he doesn't build Cinderhulk on it. And like
yeah,
I know this is a
right?
huge sticking point for people, but like I feel like that would have made like a ridiculously large amount of difference
It
in
is
terms
kind
of his survivability.
It's still
in team fight.
5.8 too. Like
Yeah,
that's the biggest
it's just
thing.
like why?
It's
And Illusion on Young Glory built it the same way, and it was just like okay, like why? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're
then
gonna be
Swift came
diving
out,
in.
and you're
I
like,
Yeah,
blame
and then
two men,
Swift
dude.
built it properly.
Yeah,
So
okay, well, right.
congrats to
And the
Swift.
thing
But,
the
like,
thing is,
no.
yeah, I don't.
he just
No,
Jackson,
blew
Jackson,
up.
Jackson, what is it?
Come on, Jackson, let's
Do you wanna
go.
fight
Jackson,
me on
Spit
this?
it out.
what's your problem?
No,
Tell
I'm
us your
just,
problem.
versus Cinderhulk.
no, I'm just saying like at the same time like I did really want the Nocturne to work with the Ori combo and just kind of like the Ori delivery ball system, but I think the difference like if we're talking about Swift in this conversation, the difference is I think EDG is a lot more experienced in dealing with a Nocturne and they were really good at slowing him down and getting that 6. Not to say that unlimited potential wasn't in their terms against Swift, like they did try to invade and slow him down and stuff, but I don't know. I feel like that was a really risky thing to do against EDG, and I think that if he would have gotten 6 faster, it would have been a different story. Because if you're not going to get, and here's the other thing, like this is what I hate about that set or that game is I think itemization literally screwed over IG. Because okay, I can kind of understand going warrior if you are able to get an uninterrupted jungle path up to 6 and then gank early, because the the warrior allows you to get the like kills a lot easier and so on. But I think it's like at the point where you know you're going to be slowed down and you're not going to be like the primary carry of your team because you were slowed down and the enemy is focusing on you, then it's then that's when it's a really stupid idea to build Cinderhulk. Like I think, or to build warrior, sorry, and like in terms of like Swift doing well in it this week and going a more DPS oriented build, even though he started off with Cinderhulk, it's kind of like a different story just because they're not against EDG, they're against like unlimited potential, and so it's obviously a lot better or a lot easier to pull off Nocturne there. And even then, even though he had a really good scoreline, I really don't think that Swift was like the primary reason for them crushing that game, and I
That
think
game
it was more
a
the Kassadin.
shit show.
To be fair to Drexen's point, I swear to you, Swift could have went for good old Magus Poppy, and they probably would have won that. So.
Yeah,
But,
like
hey,
literally, he
hey,
didn't have to do anything in that
Swift
game.
played.
What are you talking about? He got the MVP.
Swift played Master Yi Jungle in Demacia Cup, and it was
I
like
need
the
to see
one
that.
game they lost.
Mhm.
And it was terrible, okay? So Swift can't just play anything. But what I
I
wanted
just-
to say about Cacao's Nocturne
Hmm.
is that we have already talked about how IG, their team fighting has improved and they're waiting. They typically like are a little bit slower to start and they're waiting until late game. And so if you're going to be running a Nocturne with that type of team, having Rookie on the Orianna, like why I just don't understand why you wouldn't build Cinderhulk for those team fights. That's
And by
my
the
main
way-
problem. Is it doesn't seem to suit like their actual play style and what has worked well for them all season.
Yeah, and by the way, Demacia Cup is going on right now.
Yep.
Probably not going to talk about this show. Wait, you should probably say something, Kelsey, though, because I know you want to have some. Yeah.
I mean, Demacia Cup has been really fun. That's all I want to
Yeah.
say. Like, the round of 32 is almost done, and then then we'll have slightly more competitive games. Like I think, unfortunately, IG and LGD play in round of 16, so that kind of sucks. But
Yeah.
so it's again going to be a situation where one of the best teams doesn't get to go to round of 8 just because of seeding.
Yeah.
And you can see
But
crazy stuff like Swift playing Mastery Jungle. And
it does
losing.
tend to happen a lot in Demacia Cup
No, it
teams.
was really
The
fun to
moment they
watch.
realize they're facing an LSPL team, they're like, you know what?
Karthus Jungle
Yeah,
has already been played by
Yeah.
Invictus Gaming,
One,
so
though.
yeah.
So we have quite a long line of you know words are not coming out of my mouth. We have a lot to talk
Stuff.
about this game stuff
This week, yeah.
this episode. So next episodes we'll definitely be talking about Demacia Cup. I
We might
promise
even
you.
do a special Demacia Cup episode. Oh, once round of 16 is done or something. I don't know.
Oh my god! All right, you've heard it. I don't know how people are gonna be hyped about that.
I don't think anyone will care.
This is. I feel like every Demacia Cup, there's always a new LSPL baby, a new LSPL child that we hold up to the sun. It's like we've got the next one, guys.
I don't think there will be one this split unless it's
Yeah.
like
Really bad.
unless it's like Starhorn or something.
I just want to see newbie somehow do it, but that's just my faith in the
Didn't
organization.
Newbie already get eliminated
Yes, yeah, I know.
by another
I know.
LSPL team?
Yeah, okay.
It's Hyper
Definitely.
Youth Gaming, man.
Hyper Youth Gaming
Hyper
is our new
Youth
baby.
Gaming.
Come
It's-
on.
I can't
Good old
believe
Raphael.
17. Speaking of Fizz, I can't believe 17. For those of you who don't know who 17 is the ex top laner for LGD before they got Acorn and Flame.
Before they
he was-
absolutely rammed him with literally the
He
Korean.
he was probably, I don't know, it was either him or Cola in terms of LPL summer, and then Cola got significantly better in time for Worlds, so it was probably definitely him as like
Yeah.
the worst top laner in LPL 2014 summer. So, but he used to be a mid lane main. So he, like, speaking of Yasuo and Fizz top, right? That was like his bread and butter. And now he's just owning people on Cinderhulk Fizz in LSPL with like ridiculous 15-0-5 and 17-2-3 stat lines. Are just like everyone bans it against him. No, 17, please no. Please have mercy. Please spare my children. Why?
I just want him to be like, after every game, it's like you just got shit on by the worst LPL top laner.
And XQ was always a Vayne main, and then PYL only ever let him play Lucian, so he's like, yes, I can do whatever I want.
Honestly, they're super funny to watch.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah. So we got out of track because you know what? I'm the host and I love veering this train off
He
to a
loves
different-
LSPL.
Love LSPL. So just to finish the IG topic, I loved it because you know Ricky literally just shit on like by me and I guess Pon. It's like rookie. You know what?
My favorite
so
was the
sorry.
swerve.
I'm so sorry I doubted him. I'm so sorry. Like,
I'll have to post that GIF. I think it was Teps who got the GIF of Pawn like swerving all over the lane as his
Yeah,
zero
and
rookie
he's
I
kills.
don't wanna
He's
get
like
hit by-
trying to dodge the poison, but he's already poisoned, and Rookie is
Yeah.
just like slowly killing him.
Just think about that. He's literally making progress and leaving the fucking lane because he's like, I need to dodge every now.
Yeah, like it just makes no sense.
To answer the chat's question, Showtime is actually pretty shit. Like, they got rid of their, I think, their best player, Go Eat, and now he's on T-Bear Gaming, and T-Bear Gaming is, like, a significantly worse VGE Gaming, where their support and jungle try to carry them, and
Yeah.
they have, like, Bobo in the mid lane, and why is he even still relevant? And,
Wait,
okay.
Bobo in the mid lane? Okay, I
Yes,
see.
they
Yeah,
replaced,
yeah.
and their other mid laner was better. Just continuous roster decisions that are puzzling.
That's just, I'm so sad. Anyways,
No.
King. Let's talk about King. We need to talk about King. Everybody wants to talk about
Do
King.
we really?
We need to
Do
talk
we
about
really
King.
need to talk
We
about
need
King?
to talk
No,
about
because
King.
you just wrote an article on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelsey. Turns right on you. So, King, guys, finally got their 2 Koreans back. Yay. Unfortunate. Well, is it unfortunately? I don't know. Insects in the top lane. So, we're probably going to have to talk about this whole top lane fiasco at some point. We probably will. Is it even on the notes here? I feel like it should be on the notes.
It is on
okay,
the notes.
basically, it
It's
is
right
on the
after talking about Team King.
Yeah, it's literally right after talking about Team King. So let's talk about Team King as a whole before we really dive into the whole top lane jungle fiasco. So, alright, so Zero's back. How's Name's back feeling? Is Has the weight been lifted from his shoulders?
I still feel
Kelsey.
like that even though Name
Okay.
is like, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say I still
Yeah.
feel that even though Name is like a little more consistent lately, he still like only has those like glimpses of brilliance that like show his old play. But the team overall, I will say, I don't feel like it's all on Name's back anymore. I do kind of feel like the team overall is just like a lot smarter. But the funny thing is that even though King is a lot smarter, they like almost consistently lose their lanes. Like they had like in their game against Vici or in the set against Vici, they were like almost completely behind. In, yeah, they were behind in farm in like literally every lane, but they
Yeah.
just out rotated and played really really well. But that's I mean it's really hard to say in like a set against a team that like has a new jungler and.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
like things are completely
Yeah.
shifted.
But
So
they
like,
were. I mean, they did take a game off of Chaogu, and I thought
Chaogu, yeah.
like I mean, I was really wary when I saw Insec in the top lane because, like, I'm really familiar with top lane. Insec he used to be on KT Bullets, but his champion pool was literally like Shen and Zach,
Zach.
which
Lisa and top.
yeah. I mean, hey, Shen might be coming back, so maybe that's
watched-
something to
Yeah, there we
look
go.
forward to
I
in
watched
later
a lot
patches.
of Lisa and top VODs this
Years old,
This
it's like,
week.
so I was like,
Uh.
okay, what's he gonna play? And as it turns out, like his Gnar is not terrible. Like, would I say it's anywhere close to like the best?
It's
No.
pretty bad. I
It's-
watched that game a lot, and
It's not
literally
great.
he like
It
I
was-
initially was like, I think he should get the MVP, but really the biggest impact he has was not getting dove and split pushing. And
It
his
was
ults
honestly
were like,
better than I thought it would be. That's why
Okay.
I'm saying this.
The saddest
Yeah, I mean,
thing to hear.
I had no faith because Gnar is a champion that when he works well, you have to like team fight around him properly, right? Like that's his biggest benefit, in my opinion, to a team. And that is not something that I was going to anticipate from Insec at all. And I feel like I guess because my expectations were, oh, he's gonna throw on top lane Gnar, they were significantly, exceeded by his performance.
I was like
Yeah.
just so shocked when he sensed that the gank was coming in the Chaogu set. I was like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, he backed away. What is this? And then I think actually, to your point, I do think his rage bar management is actually really solid. Like he always had the correct amount of rage for fights. It was just his ults were really
Yeah.
questionable. So
But hey, it vastly exceeded my expectations. And I guess this is the roster that they're going to be going forth with. So, having Zero in the bot lane, I think, makes a huge difference. Like he's just like I mean I can't even think of anything specific that stood out to me in terms of like super flashy Zero plays. Like, but and I'm sure there were some, but like it's just such an upgrade.
I just want to say.
Like,
your face is so good.
I just
Such-
love. It's like such an up. I'm like, oh my
Like,
god! I just hope that. I
No.
just hope that Sync Dream somewhere isn't watching this. Obviously he isn't, but one would like to dream that he's watching himself just getting shit on on a Western talk show about
That sounds
China.
mean, but like even
Yeah.
if Zero was just like serviceable, I feel like he'd be an upgrade. To
Sync Dream can only play one champion. His
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morgana is actually pretty good, but it's still only one champion.
He's a good Morgana, but you know what? You know, other champions are currently being played, and you kind of can.
He
ban
can
it.
go to Europe because that's the only champion that supports their play.
Wow.
So
At least in the
I
LPL.
still can Sync Dream go.
LPL does have a track
no, I'm just
record of
saying that
banning-
Europeans really love Morgana. I don't even understand it right now, but they really, really love Morgana right now. So.
Oh my god, this is the new European Kelsey. Like, you guys. It's just like.
I'm just baffled. I'm like, is this Sync Dream? What's
Did that
happening?
happen again before? Like Europe?
Yeah, Europe always loves
Vander
Morgana.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always loved Morgana. I don't think they've stopped loving Morgana, is the issue.
Issue.
It's kind of like Barry and his Metal Grows meme. He can't stop.
Just
He
can't.
just-
It's like every day you wake up hoping, or at least thinking it'll end, but it just keeps coming back. Alright, so I guess now we can finally talk about it. Guess who else is the top laner? Apparently Dandy.
Dandy.
Dandy
Jungle
and
rivals
Insect.
meet in
So,
the top lane.
Yep. Hey, you know what?
I
a
was
lot of
seriously
you can
hyping up
learn.
this match like that. I was like,
Done,
hey
not
guys, I
done.
can't wait for Insect to be back and him to face Dandy in the top lane.
It's like what the fuck? How else are you gonna have a duel if they're not facing each other? That's the issue. It's like that's how we have a good old fashioned face off. Yeah, that's how it is. Okay, I
Yeah.
thought I messed up there. Anyways, but yeah, like that's interesting. How's Dandy going? How's World 6? That name. How is
World 6
VT?
is definitely a better jungler than Hatong.
Yeah.
That can be said.
Context, World 6 would be like okay, right? But
Yeah.
it's the fact that they're replacing
Yeah.
one of the best junglers in the world and
Yeah.
putting him in the top lane and then putting World 6 there. So it's like, okay, I'm not sure what happened with Carrie, but like you couldn't find a replacement top laner instead of keeping Dandy in the jungle. Like it's not a matter of thinking that World 6 was terrible, and it's not a matter of thinking that Dandy was terrible in the top lane. It's a matter of taking Dandy out of the jungle position significantly changes how much that team could do.
Mm-hmm.
So
In my
here's
opinion, anyway.
Oh, sorry. So here's a. I don't have my janky rumor tag to flash on the screen for you, so I'm just gonna
Oh,
break
God.
this down in terms of facts I have and the rumor. So, and my theory. So the facts are that
Here we go.
Vici Gaming came out last week and said Carrie is sick. We'll be playing with Dandy top. They had Hatong jungle, which best idea anyone has ever had. Let's put a champion. Let's put a player who doesn't really understand where he's supposed to be on the map in jungle. Okay,
Yeah.
this is excellent. Maybe he can be Kikis and play jungle Twisted Fate. It'll be awesome. Let's. So that went awful because the only team they faced was Invictus Gaming, and we already covered how Invictus Gaming just like. I mean, Rookie was able to destroy their substitute mid laner, and then he was able to destroy Hatong, so he continued to destroy people. This, Carrie posted to his QQ fan group that he will no longer play top for Vici Gaming, and that he's going to be looking for a new team for next year. So they picked up a really, really high ranked solo queue jungler called World 6, and that's the roster they're playing with. So the speculation is that the best free agent player, because you can't do transfers, so they can't pick up Go Going, guys, they can't pick up Coral 1, guys, they can't pick up Flame because that also violates the 3 Korean limit, all this other stuff. But they can pick up free agents, they can pick up solo queue players. I'm guessing the best solo queue talent for the team that they could find was a jungler.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Because my
And-
question was, like, why don't they just pick up a solo queue top laner? Or, like, some...
And the other speculation I have is that Dandy and Mata are literally so fed up with everything that's happening that Dandy's like, I'm going to take a lane position and I'm going to carry this goddamn team. So that would be my other theory, is that it would be a player-based decision. Or everyone is just not getting along, like another OMG situation, so they had to make some kind of change, and this was their best possible option. I think either of those are possible. Mata is continuously trolling in games, so there's obviously something going on.
Mata's been showing in games for a while, I feel.
Yeah. Since
And
last split.
Mata's AMA, apparently he's poor, and everyone's treating him poorly, and life just sucks, and he's awful, and okay, Mata. Excellent. Here, have some more money.
He's just like arguing with the team manager and they just like stuff dollar bills in his mouth.
No, it's
Literally
the
just
thing, he
like
keeps
spammed
getting-
his Weibo of like the one gif of just like him like tearing his
Like-
face. It's
After
like the dollar bills.
No, what really happened was after he trolled in the first game and they fined him publicly, he just kept trolling, and so they actually have just been continuously fining him because he keeps trolling and doesn't learn his
That's why
lessons.
he's poor.
So he actually is poor and can't even afford the Samsung White Mata skin. And it's just, no. I have no idea what's going on. Like I said, the only facts we know is that Vici Gaming's carry has said that he's looking for a top laner. Or he's looking for a new team, and that Dandy is playing top, so.
Either way, that's miserable for VG. Like, they were considered like a mid to top tier team last split, and now it sounds like they're having similar problems. Like, you can't obviously equate them, but like these two teams met, and as much as I joke about Dandy versus Insect in the top lane. Like, there are two teams that have had significant weird roster issues, and like it seems really similar to, like, I don't know if there's like a motivation problem on the team similar to what Starhorn came out and said that they had, but it it significantly lowers my expectations of what that team will be able to do if there are some sort of like motivation or like on team communication disagreements, arguments, stuff like that. Like, it sounds at this point from what you just said, Kelsey, like it sounds like something that won't be easily fixed at all.
Yeah, also if it's even if Dandy does become like mechanically and just like intelligently like qualified enough to be able to actually carry from the top lane even against other like really high quality top laners and just catch up and do that kind of thing, that still doesn't dismiss the fact that one, he's breaking like one of the greatest synergies the world has ever seen with Mata, I mean back in the day, and then two, it's like even if he does build those skill sets as a top laner to carry supposedly, like the problem is that he's still eliminating a massive quality of himself that took years to build up, which is that like jungle, which is like that map control and vision control that he built up with Mata. Like they even said on the broadcast on how like for every ward that Mata or Dandy doesn't place, the other like compensates, so they have that synergy going on. And so no matter how good he is as a top lane, it's completely irrelevant because the team is losing a quality that they can't get back that took so long to build up. So I don't know, I really don't see them climbing out from middle of the pack. I guess the only thing that's like looking good for Vici is the fact that they like don't have to look at Vasily like whatsoever anymore, because like Endless like went on Tristano and was like, I guess like there's this thing going on with Vasily where he had like train really hard because they were like threatening to like permanently set the I don't know the full story. It was like that's brief tweet I read, but apparently like Vasily was like training really hard so that he could prove himself as like to get back on the team or something like that. And so Endless is like, fuck you bitch, I'm picking Tristana, and just like went off and like Goomba stomped all over King, and he's like, now that I can hard carry on Tristana, what's left? Like what's your purpose in life?
Twitch comes like, back in meta. No.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's like, what's your purpose in life, man? And so like yeah, Vasily is just probably like crying somewhere, and Endless is just better than him anyway. But either way, that's the only thing that I can see that's like positive for Vici right now. Otherwise, like I don't know. I mean, I will say though that I can't be too critical of the decision to send Dandy top, because if it's true that Carey like was sick and then like for whatever reason with like within a week's notice said like, okay guys, I don't want to play top anymore, if that like is chronologically accurate, like I can't really expect them to make like a really high quality decision in that short amount of time. So that is like the best thing they could do given like an emergency situation. So, and
to clarify, he didn't say why he's leaving the team. He just says, I won't be playing top for Vici Gaming anymore and I'm looking for a new team. So it could be he could be benched, he could have decided to leave. Either is a possibility.
All I know is that the early report I was kind of like shady on, because I feel like every Chinese organization does this, where they just kind of like, I don't want to say they spin it in a way, but it's just like it's just
right.
Like,
in a couple weeks, he could be back, and he'd be like, "JK, we're best friends again." I mean, UZI has done it. Koro's done it recently, where they're just like, "I'm not playing anymore, guys," and then they're back.
It's like, hey,
literally word for word. That's exactly how they say it. They're just like tapping on the M and N key, and no, okay.
I hope so, because I mean, losing Danny in the jungle is just.
An interesting thing I noticed about this week's games, though, for Vici Gaming and King. King won every game where they role swapped and lost every game where they had standard lane matchups, and Vici Gaming won every game where they had standard lane matchups initially and lost every game where they lane swapped. And I think watching the games, I was trying to figure out why that would be. For Vici Gaming, it seemed like every game where they had standard lanes, like Dandy was able to choke out a teleport advantage really easily. So, I mean, granted he was facing Insect and Aluka, so I don't think he'll be able to do this against like better top laners. Yeah. But he could either, like in one case, he got Insect to really, really low health and just chunked him down, and then when they made the teleport call, like really, really quickly after that, and won the fight off of like 5 people going bottom. And Insect teleported in just to feed for some reason.
He does that sometimes.
In the game versus Aluka, like he actually forced him out of lane, so he had to use his teleport, so he couldn't even show up for the fight at all. So I think that's a significant thing, is that because Dandy, as a jungler, you could see on Samsung White, he would go top a lot. and he would gank for Looper early, and then Looper would have like an advantage over the top laner for when there's a teleport battle. So I think this is just like Dandy's natural understanding of how top lane works. So that's what he's manipulating. For King, it seemed to me that, especially in the matchup against King, because I think World 6 also doesn't really, because he has a solo queue jungler, doesn't really understand how to play in the lane swap situation. Mm-hmm. And he was much more proactive in standard lane situations. But also I think that for King, it was like Insec was a distraction for the team in a lane swap, because they're like, oh, let's go dive the new top laner who doesn't understand how to lane swap. Woo! And I know he played an entire season for KT Roaster Bullets. Thank you very much. Yes, I do. Okay, thank you. No,
Did you know?
Let's go dive.
Did you?
Let's go dive Insec, who is a new top laner, relearning the role, and like Name was able, and Zero were able to do whatever they wanted in lane. Whereas when they had standard lanes, like people just dove Name repeatedly, and King still doesn't know how to deal with that situation. So,
and to be fair,
here's my theory, by the way. Here's my theory as to why Dandy will be the best top laner in China. All right. So going into the first like spring split, everything was nice and everyone was like, "Oh my God, this region literally has the greatest top lane talent in a good portion of teams, you know." And then you have Luca, but then suddenly dominoes start falling. Oh, Koro, I don't know what. Oh, he's getting replaced by Amazing J. Okay, that was just earlier on in the split, but that's fine. That's whatever. Then now Carrie's falling, of course. Then you have what's another top laner? This is really. Oh God, this is falling.
Your theory is falling apart.
No, it was a really good
Going and Xiang, yeah.
Yeah, Going and Xiang. That was a good one. And so now you don't have Going anymore. What next? Will Flame and Acorn just decide that, hey, you know what, number 17, you seem to be doing so well down there in LSPL. Come on up.
This seems like a very legit story. Definitely can see this happening.
Slowly, the top lane will just be inhabited by other laners, as you can see from not top laners. For whatever reason, ADG thought, you know what, ADG, I think Mouse is a perfectly fine top laner for you.
Yeah. Oh God, I
all
totally
of
forgot
the players are being swapped top. Like, I don't understand this. It's really weird.
Suddenly it just doesn't matter anymore. Like,
they saw a Luca and they were like, if a Luca can do.
Oh my God, the standard. It's the standard. All right, so let's just swap this up. Here's the best part. Best games of the week. And why? Emily, you're the first one on this one.
Yes.
We don't even have time to think.
I'm gonna go. I already prepared.
Oh my God.
That's why I make lists.
Okay, children, you can't all pick the same answer. Children.
I'm gonna go with Snake versus LDG game 1. Super close. It was back and forth. You get to see Flandra do that. Like eschew Cinder Hulk for a Triforce thing on Fizz. You get to see him play Fizz. You get to see a fantastic performance from you and Wayless on some of their signature champions, and you also get to see Imp play Twitch. I mean, it has like a lot of really flashy plays. It has a lot of really like strong like map movement. It was super back and forth. Like I loved watching that game. Like I actually rewatched it today just because I was like, oh, okay, this. Like, I started taking notes, and then I was like, alright, I'll just watch the entire game again, because it was so good. And so, yeah, I'd recommend that to anyone. Like, I think it was the best game of the week.
There we go. Alright, Drexen, it's on you now.
Well, alright, I'll go with the obvious one. I'll go with two of them, because somebody else is going to pick my first one. So I'll just pick the second one strictly on the merit of entertainment value. Okay, so EDG versus IG game 1. Really close. It was obviously unfortunate that IG didn't win, because I think that they... Well, I'm not going to say they deserved to win because that's just inaccurate because of the way they lost. But then the game I was going to mention for entertainment factor is World Elite versus LGD Game 1. Because for some reason, World Elite thought it was a good idea to start throwing Aluka on carry champions. And, and I say this game for like one specific play. There's like a play where, I'm trying to remember. I think, Aluka was getting dove top. And... Acorn like threw his fish out and it like completely missed Aluka, And Luca was safe, you know, he could have just stood still, he would have been completely fine, but instead what he did was he walked up back into the fish ultimate, and then and as he walked up to it, the fish ultimate knocked him back into the tower, so he was pinned there, and then he died from a completely safe, like, 3v1 or 3v1 gank. It was beautiful. Like, he literally just jeopardized himself for, like, no reason whatsoever, out of complete safety.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about fizz ults. It's just that the moment you see it get...
that magnetic quality.
So yeah,
it's comedic gold.
He literally killed himself. It was actual suicide, so it was great. Go watch that game.
Alright, Kelsey.
Okay, I think I'll go with Invictus Gaming versus Snake Game 1 then. I actually think that Invictus Gaming played a really intelligent early game for a while. I thought that they were actually going to get slaughtered by Snake because I feel a little bit like their weakness is distracting people by the top lane 1v1. And then so this will cause people to like dive Zatai and feed relentlessly while everyone else just farms. And Snake does that also anyway, but Flandra is probably going to be fine, and they're not going to send their entire team top to deal with him because, frankly, they don't really gank for Flandra very much. And
yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't think it was a very good stylistic match, but instead Invictus Gaming made really smart adaptations, did a bunch of like 3-person roams, and I don't know. It was a really interesting match. I was like, afterwards I said, okay, Invictus Gaming can bounce back from that terrifying Edward Gaming set, which I think Invictus Gaming would definitively be top 2 if they didn't tilt so hard. Like, they very obviously tilt very hard, so.
Yeah. Alright, well, you know what? All you people going for very, I would say...
I'm gonna go for an LSPL game!
No, not this time around. Like, I feel like everyone's going a different route, trying to be creative. I'm just gonna repeat it. Just for emphasis, IG versus EDG. It was just like, you know how you're just wandering a desert and you just see an oasis and you're like, no, that can't be real. That's an actual, like, a decent quality game. That's beautiful. So I actually like. I even like showed it to.
I'm with Emily. I think hers was actually the best game. So.
Okay, yeah, fine. The reason why I loved it was based on the idea of EDG always forcing fights, in the sense that they were a very proactive team, and IG was actually sticking in it for the most part, and they were playing completely reactively for a good, healthy portion of the game. And I was like, generally, I do not like reactive playstyles. Like, I feel like you should be the one forcing your engagements, but they were like always counter engaging. Though, to be fair, the first tower dive was a little fucked up. It was not done well, and so that would probably help the reactive playstyle when the enemy team was fucking up their own proactive plays. But that being said, I thought I saw a lot of quality, and I love that. It was something I was looking forward to. So I guess with that being said, should we talk about? I feel like I'm gonna pose this to you guys. Should we talk about LSPL today or next show? Because I feel like we're probably not going to be talking about. I don't know.
I didn't watch today's games. I just watched yesterday's.
Yeah.
I think we can talk about it next show. Because OMG versus EDG got moved, and I think that a lot of the game quality this week in LPL isn't as good, so we'll probably need more topics.
I was thinking the same thing. So yeah.
Yeah. The other reason why I recommend LGD versus Snake, just like the lane trades in mid from you were so intelligent, like waiting for him to use the specific Orianna cooldowns, like moving the Q away and being able to execute all of those abilities as soon as he dropped that ball, and like he couldn't even react in time to use his E, and this is like the amazing Godby, the Orianna god. So I don't know. It was just, and then after that, he was just so tilted. He was like, he had to pause. I cannot. No. What is this? This just happened.
Up in a ball.
But yeah, I kind of wish I had watched those games from like either Yu's or Godby's perspective, because that game was like really good in terms of mid lane laning phase and lane trades, and how both players reacted. So, though I do think Beast won that game for them, like so hard. Beast was really good that set. So
Yeah. All right, guys. I feel like we've covered as much as we should. We've gone on for quite a bit.
okay.
So let's just go for the good old shout outs. I'm the one hosting now, so I'm not the one with the burden of. Probably still am. So let's start with Emily.
Um, Shout out to LOL Esports because that's where I write. Oh, I did have something to say, which is kind of a rant, but I'll
There
try
you
to
go.
make
Let's
it
go
quick.
for it. Yeah.
So there's an article released on Faker by ESPN, and it's really good actually. You should go read it. But my problem is the backlash around that is people are always like, "Oh my gosh, this is what LOL Esports writers should aim for." Blah 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 blah. You all suck. And you know what? I don't care if you think my writing sucks, but come and tell me why it sucks so I can get better because that's where I work, and I honestly am trying super hard to be a better writer, and that's my rant.
Also, give
mean-
her like 25 times the funding so that you can even
So I
compare
can-
it on a decent scale to ESPN writers.
And also convince SK Telecom to let her follow Faker around Korea for several months.
Oh my god, can I follow Kakao around China? That would be like my dream.
Oh god.
You should do it.
So.
Hey man, sweeping generalizations. You just say them. You don't have to actually prove them. That's all.
I guess that's my one thing is that having access to all these coaches and other things is sometimes difficult because a lot of organizations like don't want to give you access if you're not part of a well-known publication or anything, and also just having that kind of money is really difficult for people who aren't ESPN or the New York Times or Playboy. So that's just my caveat on the issue. Like, I think that you could write really in-depth and interesting articles from the perspective of an esports fan with that kind of funding, and I think there's room for both, honestly. I think the ESPN article is useful for people who want to understand esports and get into, like, what this culture is about. Obviously, there's a lot of emphasis on, oh my gosh, this $1 million salary offer. Oh my gosh, are you sure? Why
Yeah.
didn't you take it? Oh my gosh, $1 million. Oh my gosh.
That's
So
money.
that was just like emphasizing esports is important. You should pay attention, and that's kind of how I feel like the tone of a lot of mainstream articles will continue to be for a while. But I don't know. There are a lot of other valuable stuff. Like obviously, Fion wrote a really great article about Faker called "Boxing with God."
God, part 2 coming soon.
That's much more in depth and geared towards esports fans. Thorin has done that rant about how Faker is the outlier, going into like some of the stylistic components and what makes Faker so good.
Now Coma is ruining history.
Yeah.
And there was that Gold per 10 article that's much shorter than either of those, but also had a lot of like interesting points and background about Faker that I hadn't known until I read it, and that were actually also in the ESPN article. So, like, I already knew about it. Woo!
Can I just start by saying that I love certain personalities of like going into like, for instance, Thorin. I feel like every time I read a Thorin article, or I always hear it in his point in a ranting, because it's like a Thorin rant is the most hilarious fucking thing.
It's the
ever.
best
love it
thing
so
when
much.
you can read a piece and hear it in someone's voice. Like, it's
Yeah.
the best.
It's beautiful. All I need to do is hear like a tape of Fion's voice, and this is gonna happen. It's just like it's just at that point forward. The rest of his articles are either going to be golden or it's just going to be ruined. Like, it's
Nice.
just
Oh
like-
no.
This is why he actually hides himself now.
Oh god. All right, so I guess Drexen. There we go. Shoutouts.
Now the thing
Or-
is he's actually Apto, and
He's actually
Apto just writes on the side. That's like a side job when he's not like writing ladders and stuff.
Oh,
Okay.
God.
Okay.
God.
So just shout out to Esports Heaven, and oh yeah, I'm also really curious to see if there's even a remote possibility of Vici being like last place,
Oh,
because
right.
like okay, like that's like what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if this will screw him over that hard, or if they'll still at least be decent, because I feel like the bottom end teams are like getting a little bit better. And even though Vici has still been winning games, the teams they split against were World Elite and King. So
Literally
yeah,
the last
that's
place
like-
teams. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not good. And then they're up against RNG next week. But I want to see like if Snake like just dumpsters them, because I think they're playing Snake on Sunday morning,
Mhm.
and I think that's going to like determine how bad of a shape Vici is in.
I feel
So,
like so many
I'm
of
really
these
looking forward to that.
organizations go into these like the just the regular season. Just of course they're eight
It's
places
like,
and going into
Why not just try this out? We have
Yeah.
so many
They
games
just don't give a
left.
fuck. They're like,
Exactly.
it's come on, it's like Royal Never Give Up and Masters 3. We're gonna destroy them, and then they realize once they get going in the regular season, it's like, oh, we actually need to start winning
That
all of these
moment when
games.
Dandy loses top to Looper.
Oh God.
God, I'm
Oh
so
my
excited.
God. Oh God.
Oh my
I
god.
totally didn't even make that connection, but that's gonna be fantastic.
So yeah, but
I'm just gonna watch
All right.
every LGD.
speaking of
I'm just gonna watch every
RNG,
BG game.
I
Yeah.
know they had that really close game against EDG, but I think they still suck because I feel like there
Yeah.
was never a point where EDG wasn't in control.
Mhm.
I probably will do a rant or something about that in the future, depending on how they do this week. So I just didn't have time this week because I had to be in Ohio for God knows why.
I mean, I feel like it's a discussion. People are gonna say, well, RNG. I mean, they took EDG as far as like, well, did you see all like LCK or OGN? Be like, I feel like Anarchy. If you're making that
Yeah.
game, like
Yeah.
Anarchy literally took a game off of SKT.
SKT
That's
today, yeah.
Is Anarchy as good as SKT?
His name is Mickey God, okay? I'm just throwing that out there. That used to be his name in solo queue. He's literally
God.
Mickey the God.
Yep.
Actually, it was
All
really
right.
cute when Anarchy did beat Najin because his team was like all sitting because like there are no Anarchy fans. His team's like sitting there watching him do the interview, and one of them's holding up a sign that says "Mickey God." It was actually adorable.
Kelsey, you need to get your shout outs through.
Okay, so shout out to the Score Esports. If you want to learn more about Dandy and Insec in the top lane, I wrote an article about that where I break down actually more detail about how their games went and some of their past context, etc. And I talk about Satai because I have to throw him in somehow.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And yeah, I guess shout out to the Chiefs. Oh, I gotta love them. I know that there's currently an interesting discussion going on about uh, representation versus world class discussion. So that's always it's if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a beautiful program or website called Twitter. Just go through and it's a lovely discussion that never ends. So check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, there we go. So I guess we should start the waving process so we can end the show.
God bless patch 4.10 this weekend! Hype! Ah! No more.
Yeah.
Actually, Cinderhulk is pretty much dead in LSPL, so that's kind of sad, but
Yeah.
goodbye. I mean, on top laners anyway. This is the longest waving session we've ever
I know.
had.
I was gonna say.
I'm not
are we
cutting.
still waving?
I'm not
Actually
cutting the
not.
stream. I'm just gonna
Nah.
keep going. No, just gonna. No, okay, I'm cutting
Don't
the stream
wave.
now. Hold on.
This is really interesting. And the fact that this has been going on so long and they have been playing these carry top and mid laners is what why why couldn't they have done this with leveling and going? Like
Yeah.
I feel like nothing's really changed because they aren't like really significantly more supportive in the jungle and top lane positions with these new starters. And it's not that they're doing bad or anything like that. It's just kind of like if that was the whole concept behind making the transition of those players, then what is the purpose? Like I don't really understand why they switched anything out if they're just going to play the same way they did before.
So, what do you think about this, Kelsey? Because I feel like what we're getting to was the change felt a lot more internal. We didn't really see much of a, I guess, I mean, we did see kind of a shift in playstyle differences, but I feel like maybe we see like a more one-track minded team in the sense that they're more organized.
Like I just feel like they tried so hard with the wrong roster to make
Yeah.
protect the Uzi work last split, and now all of a sudden Uzi is playing Sivir and like helping supplement a team of like carries and threats in the other lanes. Like I don't understand.
I actually disagree with the thought that it's less UZI centric because the only case where I actually think that's true is the last game that they played, where there were a lot more ganks mid for Cool's Varus. I forget who their opponent was, but there were a lot more frequent ganks mid. Otherwise, almost always, juejue goes to the bottom lane. Top lane has the highest kill participation in the league, Xiong, actually, of all top laners, because he's constantly teleporting bottom, and that's how they start action. Like, there are always just fights bottom side, and UZI actually, I haven't done the stats post this week, but prior to this week, he had the highest gold percentage for his team of any player in the league. So, I mean, they're still funneling a lot of resources towards UZI. It's just that I feel like despite that,
Isn't trying to do different things. Like different parts of the map aren't trying to do different things at once. So it does seem a bit more cohesive, even if like the overall a vision of what they're trying to do is very similar, if that makes sense. Like the pieces are in more agreement
Yeah.
for what the team overall wants to do. Sorry,
And
that's
so,
I think
I mean, it works.
so. From my perspective, yeah, I think that's a big factor. The other thing is that the team and people close to the team ended up being fairly open about a lack of motivation, at least from going. The fact that he wasn't practicing as hard, like in the off season, his manager ended up taking away his phone to try to make him practice. The fact that
It's like fucking
he was
high school.
frequently seen
Literally.
duo queuing with girls.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I don't know, just and then people said like
The
that
Chowster of
OMG
China.
was a bit of a party team, so they
The
definitely
party-
were out partying frequently. Like that was the life, right? We formed
Yeah.
the Chinese super team. We went undefeated for the first 10 games. We obviously don't have to practice. Let's just go karaoke, get some
It's really
girls.
shocking for a team like pretty much branded as a boy band that just
Yeah,
makes
exactly.
videos and shit.
EXO OMG, right? That's the joke, is that they're EXO OMG after like I think it's the Korean or Chinese boy band. I'm sorry, I can't remember which EXO is, but just a bunch
I
of
have
pretty
no idea.
boys.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
yeah, so
So
I guess I could see that, but like, and I
but
do think
so
that they
if they're
naturally
just like
don't-
obviously they prefer to look internally and say, oh, we already have these players lying around. We like to be homegrown. Let's just throw Xiang up to the top lane.
In the
This can't
top lane.
possibly go wrong.
I will say, okay, like true, he played like Maokai or
He
whatever,
plays
but
Maokai.
like
Well, another week passed in LPL. Everybody is. It's a beautiful day, or a beautiful week, I suppose, in that everything makes sense in China. Isn't everybody happy that games are.
Totally makes
yeah,
perfect
things
sense.
make a lot of sense.
So I think we should just get it on. With this is horrible. So, OMG, everybody. Let's start off with OMG, because you know what? Why not? Everybody, that's our favorite team.
Cool had a good week. I mean, they're still. I don't know. I'm still really weird about OMG just because of the whole Uzi transfer and the fact that like I don't care. I actually don't care as much about OMG as what it did to Star Royal Club. But like I was really impressed with Cool. His Cassiopeia in was it game 1 against League? It's like super impressive. And I feel
I think
like
he's the only undefeated Cassiopeia left in LPL. So
Wow.
thank you.
good job for him. Congratulations. Also
See how
has the
long-
highest KDA of any player in LPL right now. So Cool's doing pretty well for himself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool is stepping up a lot. My main problem with OMG right now is that they've had a few weeks to play and find an identity, and like, okay, the whole purpose of this reforming of the team without the old roster, like, here's where I don't understand where OMG's really going, because they formed this new team to kind of cater to Uzi to make this style of working around him work, since that wasn't the way that the trio up top naturally played before. But now at the same time, like, I feel like they're playing more selfish laning styles and jungle styles, and Uzi is still playing a little bit more self-sufficient, even if he is playing on champions like Sivir and stuff. And so what kind of bothers me about this is the fact
Cool is carrying the team.
I
But
think that might just be a meta thing, but I think it just, in the champion picks, it just feels like they could have pulled this off with leveling and get going, personally. But
That's the thing, though. I feel like that's what we're really starting to. That's why we're starting to see such a bit like. That's the real difference. Is not so much the skill in the player or the style that they played, but how much of a say or like a difference that they've had in opinions. Now, of course, we don't know what's going on, but I feel like that's the difference. Is like the shot calling aspect of it, and now that they see more, of course, now they surround UZI in a sense. So, I don't know. I feel like that's Emily.
That could
Do you
be part
think
of
that's
it.
the
Well,
case?
I was gonna say that could be part of it because I remember previously they were saying how like Loveling and Uzi basically couldn't be on the same team. Like not because like they hate each other or anything, but just because their visions for what goes on in game are just like so drastically
that's
different.
just a
that the
theory.
team-
That's not necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
that was Kelsey's theory. But like, I can't help but think that that's probably part of the case because removing like wasn't a lot of OMG's problem in terms of Loveling himself was that he kept trying to make these really like dramatic kind of like flashy plays from the jungle, but he didn't have as much gold to do it with, so
Mm.
it wouldn't end up working out. And I think in terms of like I don't know, I still see. I would have to look at the statistics too. I still see Cool, like especially this week. I saw that Cool was kind of the more like primary carry of the team, I guess, in terms of
Yeah, I'd
playmaking.
like to see the
But
statistics, but yeah.
but like I don't know if there's anything different about the team. It I will say it does seem like the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maokai doesn't count. Everyone can play Maokai. We have established that Aluka and
Aluka.
Pokemon
So
can play
all they have
Maokai.
to
We have
do
a
is
general baseline for the Maokai.
Put him on Scion.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Automatically, they'll win.
Michael,
And,
what
like,
did you have to say before?
I was just saying on the note of like the team just like naturally meshing better. I guess you can say that, but I still think that like given time with the way they're playing now and the fact that they are more flexible with distributing wealth, at least this is like what this isn't an anecdote. I don't actually know because I don't have statistics, but this is just from watching. I do think that Leveling could meld into that, and like yeah, we say that he's used to having an insane amount of gold, and now he's trying to play the same way as he did as if he had that without those resources, but this isn't really like the first time we've seen Leveling kind of do stupid stuff in the regular season and then still turn out to be one of the best junglers showing up at international tournaments and stuff like that. So that I guess that's one of my concerns with the new lineup is how they would fare internationally, especially with how much experience. I mean, I know Gagoing has those like the issues with motivation, but those two do have a significant amount of international experience, and if they are very world focused, then I mean, I don't know. That just seems like something that seems a little bit strange to me. But yeah, I don't know. Jiang, in his defense, like for the competition that is in the top lane of China, is like doing okay. I mean, he's like holding his own. He's not like doing anything spectacular. Certainly not like a showing of going S4 Worlds or anything. But I mean, it's also a really hard comparison to make because now we have like so many Chinese top laners that aren't actually top laners playing top lane, like a huge amount.
A third of
Yeah.
the region has transitioned to the top
To top
lane.
lane.
A third of LPL has transitioned to top lane within the past year.
It is a confusing life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird.
With
Yeah.
that being said, then we can really talk about when
I realized I
on the-
left Xiang out of my article. He's so sad.
He's so, like the happiest person. He's just like looking. He's just looking at the article with a smile.